Hey, Farel The Gecko here, presenting the first official episode of Farel Forever! Since I've discussed most things in episode 0, let's just start. This is Akitoshi Kawazu, a well-known Japanese video game producer and designer. He joined Square in 1985, that is, 2 years after the company was founded and 2 years before Final Fantasy was released. And to those unaware, the game was meant to be the last for the company, hence the title, Final Fantasy. But the game did prove to be a huge success. And something people like to ignore in this story is that this was apparently Kawazu's first game ever. Hence, it's possible that it's his radical new ideas that helped the game become a big hit. Now I realize that it's just a theory, and that he wasn't the only new guy to enter the company just to work on this last title. But hey, the company did give Akitoshi a lot more power when the time came for a sequel, didn't they? And the result was different. So different that not everyone liked it, and so Kawazu was given his own project, the SaGa series, which currently has almost a dozen titles and is fairly popular in Japan, but in the West it's either unknown or met with a mass of hate. And as a fan of the series myself, I decided I should do a series of short retrospective videos to talk about it. So, let us begin. The free SaGa games for the Game Boy. This series of games is actually quite well known, even in the West, but of course under a totally different title. Yeah, the marketing department of Square just loved to change the names of the games for the US releases, which does sure get confusing in the present. This goes to the point that in the West, these free games are considered part of the Final Fantasy canon. And if we just focus on the first one, it was not only the very first RPG on the Game Boy, it was also the first Square title to sell over 1 million copies. That's right, not Final Fantasy, but a SaGa game. But let's get to the game itself now. Your goal is to reach the top of the tower known as the Tower to attain access to Paradise. Not to give away any spoilers, but you end up fighting God. And given that these were the times when Final Fantasy games were just about gathering crystals of the 4 elements, well, a game about killing God was really something.
And then you get to meet God, and God is a tiny Amish man on the Game Boy screen. And then you kill God, and that's the worst premise ever. I know that. I'm not made of stone up here, but it's the best. It was the best. It took me 8 months to beat that game. It was the best $65 I've ever spent in my life.
But that wasn't the end of it. While climbing the tower, you travel through various worlds, the medieval, heaven, the new apocalypse. Think of all the modern games that, even with their amazing graphics, fail to deliver diversity. And what about the music? Well, it's Game Boy music. Apparently as adults we're less willing to tolerate these sorts of sounds than kids, but people agree that the composers were just being experimental, which can also be said about the gameplay, where you actually have a selection of recruitable NPCs to accompany your self-made protagonist on the way to the top, and there's a real selection to choose from. Well, they're all pretty generic, but hey, late 80s RPG for the Game Boy, what do you expect? Oh, and speaking of classic 80s RPG staples, this game was hard as hell. Just one save slot, weapons break apart with time, and with the heart system, you were unable to endlessly resurrect your characters. Looking back, this isn't only a hard game, it's also flawed with glitches. And yet, it's the chainsaw glitch that this game is most fondly remembered for. it allowed a character to kill off God in just one hit. I guess something like that is bound to leave an impact. So yeah, Final Fantasy Legend, aka the first SaGa game, not perfect, but people liked it and remember it till this day. As a note on the side, this game was remade in 2002 for the WonderSwan Color, with improved graphics, plus a lot of the issues with the difficulty and balance resolved. However, like the system, it was only released in Japan. Still, there exists an English translation patch for the game, so go and check it out if it caught your interest. But now, let us go to the sequel, SaGa 2. The game starts with your dad, who's always human no matter what kind of being you choose to be, waking you up, giving you a prism, and walking out the window. That prism is a Magi piece. There are about 77 of them, and they are all part of the statue of the goddess Isis. People use them to become gods themselves. And now, it's time for you and your friends, who are also characters you just create in your classroom, to embark on an adventure to find your father and the remaining Magi pieces. Kids going out into the world to collect everything of something? I have to admit, this sounds like Pokemon. Which is awesome! From the start, you already feel like, gotta catch them all! And to make it even more exciting, the Magi pieces function similarly to materia from Final Fantasy VII, except a bit simplified. But still, Final Fantasy VII meets Pokemon? Comparing this to the first game, yeah, that one had atmosphere and a deep meaning, but cut killing God with a chainsaw out of the picture, and it just starts to feel a little bit dull. Well, this one is a lot more lively, and that's probably the reason why most people like it even more. It even has a more cartoonish look than its predecessor, which makes it easier on the eyes. The music department also shifted gears. This time Kenji Ito did most of the music, and Uematsu took a step back. But of course it's a matter of taste, which composer is better. Something less questionable is the matter of gameplay. Even fans of the first game admit that this one did better. A lot of the aspects repeat themselves, but are vastly improved and more balanced. The characters still are blank slates, except for the main character who at least has his father as some sort of backstory, but this game also delivers the fifth character. A character with personality, a name, and so forth. But they're just temporary and have no stat growth and no equipment to change. But still, an interesting addition to the party. In general, the game was good. Probably very good for the time even. Some refer to it as the best SaGa game ever. And also as a piece of trivia, supposedly back in the day, after the success of the first game, this sequel wasn't to be localized, which made a lot of fans of the first game upset, making them protest, which ended with Square fulfilling their demands, which was really good for the internet, so if it is true then, wow. But even if it's just a rumor, listen to this. In 2009, a remake was released for the Nintendo DS. It was made to resemble the newer SaGa games, including having on-map monsters instead of random encounters. Gen Kobayashi of The World Ends With You fame even provided a fresh new design for the game. And more importantly, a lot of the glitches from the original were fixed. I mean, in that game you could encounter the final boss in a random battle if the game started freaking out. But obviously, a Japanese release only. And yet, news of this game echoed worldwide, and a few sites even named the game as one of their most demanded titles to be localized. Which did not happen, naturally. But a team called Crimson Nocturnal actually created an English patch basing it on the original Game Boy version's translation, seeing how it wasn't half bad. So go and see it if you feel like it. But now, let's move on to the next game, SaGa 3. This title actually has an interesting production history. It came out less than 2 months before the next SaGa game. This is because while this one was made, the team responsible for the first 2 games worked on the 4th SaGa game for the Super Nintendo. This one, however, was developed by a whole new squad in Osaka, mostly consisting of inexperienced workers whom later also created Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, a game that my friend Chronos006 did review, so check his video out if you're curious about it. And after these 2 games, from what I've heard at least, the team disbanded and most of its former members never made another video game in their life.
And that's sad.
But onto the story. 4 characters, which were not exactly blank slates, travel through time using a special ship to prevent a flood from destroying the world. And that does sound really exciting, like a precursor to Chrono Trigger, but the end result does feel rather average, especially given the promising premise. And as to the graphics, they were not bad, but it was nothing amazing either, and it did feel cheap at times. Some of the sprites were apparently later even reused in Mystic Quest, by the way. The music itself was done by Ryuji Sasai and Chihiro Fuyoka, 2 totally different composers giving their own feel to the game. But sadly, I can't find any info on Chihiro, and Ryuji apparently mostly does music for pachinko machines. Let's talk about the gameplay now. This aspect of the game is actually more solid, but also pretty Final Fantasy-like. The weapons didn't break, and there was a normal level-up system, which you couldn't overlook, given how most of the playtime was spent grinding. That is, unless you resorted to using glitches or poor balancing issues to skip over that. Truth be told, it's not a bad game, quite solid actually, but not much about it stands out, regardless of it trying to be a portable Chrono Trigger, before that game was even made. In short, it was a very strange direction for a SaGa game to go. But nonetheless, in September of 2010, a remake for the Nintendo DS was released, once again with Gen Kobayashi in the art department, and the general gameplay mechanics being influenced by the ones of the SaGa 2 remake, which most people seem to like. As for the story, the characters were given previously non-existent personalities, and the whole general tone of the game was less serious and more lighthearted. Most people I ask say that it wasn't easy to pick up and play and drop game, with some unlockables and secrets for people who like these sorts of things. So now you people are probably asking, is there an English translation? Well, apparently Crimson Nocturnal disbanded after the previous title's translation. But the project was taken over and finished by Kate & Co. So if you people get interested into this title, check it out. Still, this was the end of the SaGa series on the Game Boy. Starting from the next game, Romancing Saga, the games would land on home consoles where the series would continue. We shall get to them in time, but first, I need to review a certain Western cartoon. Whatever, this is Farel Forever, fading out.
Farel has little Norwegians trapped.
And he's using programming languages to destroy his powers.
Now you'll tell me why raccoons are so cute!
Never.
So adorable, so cuddly and lovable, that their secret will be mine, oh mine! foil again!
Yay!
Just wait, little Norwegians, I'll find out!
Raccoons. Their secret is their great taste. Wait, what?